Hello everybody, this is Roger from Roger's Reviews, and today we're going to be doing a little board work, and we're going to be talking about how to start a tree service, staying small and keeping it all. This is what I kind of wish someone would have told me before I started a tree service. And when you're starting over, you're starting from the beginning, or however you want to call it. Say you have no equipment, you have no company, you just have like basically starting from scratch. When I started, I always had a job, and I'd work the job and then I would work the tree service on the side. And still, I got to the point where I could quit my job and basically do tree service full time. So you always want to have um, a backup plan, because the tree service is feast or famine. You make a lot of money during the season, and then off season, especially when you first get started, you'll have a lot of ups and downs. So this is what I want to basically start out with. But the thing that I did was I had a small trailer and a minivan when I started, and I had just a couple chainsaws. I bought used or from pawn shops, or just acquired along the way. So the first thing you want to get when you're starting a tree service is, of course, a chainsaw. So these are the chainsaws I recommend when you're first getting started. I would get a Stihl pole saw, and I recommend the extended pole saw. They go about 12 feet, and basically you can reach a lot of. Um, Basically, that one pole saw is going to do everything for you, as far as trimming and then reaching up from the ground and reaching as high as possible. And I still use that pole saw today, so I've been using it for over 20 years. The pole saw it telescopes out, and you can use it either way, either all the way in or all the way out, or anywhere in between. Um, that would probably be one of the first or second pieces of equipment I would get. And then I would get that's your one of your number one saws. And then if you're a climber or you have climbers working for you, I would get a Stihl top handle saw. Okay, that would be like one of your first pieces of equipment. Another thing nice with the top handle saw, when you're cutting out material, you can hold it and cut it, hold it and cut it. So a lot of time, if you're on a trailer or you're moving around and you need two hands, it's a lot easier to cut something when you have a top handle saw. And not a lot of times when you don't have a top handle saw, you'll be trying to just throw the saw at it, and a lot of times that'll be an easy way to get injured or hurt, or the saw will hit something you don't want to cut into. You don't have as much control. The third saw I would get would either be a 250 Stihl MS 250 or something a little bigger. So you're going to need basically an 18-inch saw or something a little bigger. You can get maybe um, something like 50 or 60 cc's, which would and then if you like Husqvarna, like a Rancher, um, Husky Rancher, or I would say that's around 55 cc's. Or you could get a Stihl version would probably be the Stihl 260. So you want around a 50 cc saw. That would be like your, um, basically your mid range saw or your smaller saw. And then you want to get something with, this is like an 18-inch bar, 18 to 20-inch bar. And then you want to get the fourth saw. Basically, you want to get is something that can turn like a 28 to 36-inch bar and chain. So I would probably get, I would recommend, um, there's a lot of, if you're getting a Husky, it would probably be, um, Husky, what would be a Stihl 650 Magnum. This is the saw I have. It's kind of expensive. And then your Husky would be, I'm trying to think, what would that be? It'd be, mine's going blank here. Let me think. Husqvarna. These go 650, 880, and 30. Oh, okay. Husky's 3120. That's the biggest saw they make. 880 is the biggest saw Husky makes, and that's another thing. A lot of people get the biggest saw, like Stihl's 880. That's like a $2,000 saw plus the bar and chain. The Husqvarna is a 3120. That's like the biggest saw they make. And to be honest with you, I never even had one, because both of these saws are the biggest and they're over $2,000. The next step below, a 660 or 650, can still pull a 36-inch bar and chain. So I think, let's see, hold on a second. All right, had to crunch a few numbers here. All right, I think we left off on the chainsaws. So I would recommend, there's a lot of great saws, but Stihl makes two top handles, either 193 or 201. The 201 is a professional saw, and they're about 700 bucks. So I know when you're starting out, you don't have a lot of money. So even today, I use the 193, and to kick it up a notch, I take the big bar and chain off, and I put a Pico small, more narrow bar and chain on it. So it cuts a lot more like a 201, because it's basically not pushing all that material out. If you take that same bar and chain and put it on the 201, it runs even better. Another thing I do is basically what we're doing is we're taking a pole saw bar and chain and putting it on a top handle. And when you're basically using your pole saw, I do the same thing. When you get your pole saws, a lot of times they're like 12 or 14 inch. I go to the 16 inch. That way it maximizes your cutting potential on all your pole saws and your top handle saws. Also too, if you put the same bar and chain on your pole saws as your top handle, that way you don't have as many variations in bars and chains. So what I eliminated just recently is I got rid of all my my middle range saws, and all I have now is my pole saw, top handle saw, both the same bar and chain. I skipped the middle, so you don't have three sizes of bars and chains. And now instead of on the truck having a mid-side saw, I basically get any saw that has a bigger bar and chain, the thicker bar and chain. So basically, we only have one pitch of and size of chain on the big saws, and we have one size for the pole saws and top handles. So we don't have that mid-range stuff anymore. No mid-range saws. It just eliminates a lot of the complexity of keeping all the bars and chains. So you only need one size bar and chain for all your top handle saws, and one size bar and chain for all your pole saws. So those all are one bar and chain for all of them. And then on your bigger saws, if you jump up to like a 271 or 391, which are like homeowner, like maybe they're not quite commercial saws, but they can do commercial work. And they're less expensive than your professional or commercial saws. But we've been using them for years, and they still hold up just as good. They don't have quite the torque and quite the power, but they can do the same work. It just takes a little bit longer. You just have to be a little more patient. But you save a lot of money, and also too, when you get started, sometimes bars and chains and saws come up missing. If you have professional stuff, and you have to watch them all the time because they grow legs. So you're better off buying a little bit less expensive, and then if something happens, it's not going to take you a week to replace that saw, and you're not going to be as mad because They're not going to walk off as quickly because people know they're not as expensive. And if you have a lot of people, if you're by yourself and you have a lot of people you're hiring in and out, it has more likely chance to walk away. So when you're first starting out, you can still get Husky or you can still get Stihl. You just want to start with the lower end. You don't want to get the top line stuff right away because it's unless you have it locked down 24/7, they'll grow legs. So I recommend the Stihl 271 or 391 because they have the bigger bar and chain, and you can cheat a little bit and put bigger bars and chains on them, but you're just gonna have to let them work and don't force them. Just it takes a little bit longer to cut. So these two saws are what we use on the truck, and if you want to go Husky, I wouldn't get anything less than a 365, and then you can jump up to a 385 and then they go up to 395 and 3120. But you can do 99% or at least 90% of your work with these saws. The next thing you want to do is you want to get a mini skid steer or a bobcat, but I prefer the smaller because if you get a bobcat, you're not going to be able to fit into those places. Because what we do is we recommend we do the smaller jobs. We don't do the bigger jobs anymore because it's just wear and tear on the equipment. It's wear and tear on the people. They take longer. And if you don't have all the big equipment that basically wears everything out, wears your saws out, wears your guys out, wears your equipment out, and it usually ties you up for 2 or 3 days. Where if you do smaller jobs with your smaller equipment, you can do a job or two a day and you end up making either the same amount or more than you would doing a bigger job. So if you get a big job, when you're first starting out, you struggle through it. But a lot of times what I like to do is we refer those out or sub them out to bigger contractors, bigger tree services, and then you do the smaller ones. Or you can sub out different types of the work, like maybe come in and have like a grapple saw, maybe take the tree down for you, or have someone take the tree down for you, and then hire a loader truck to come up and pick up the material and have a bigger stump grinder guy come in and grind the stump for you. But you can do the cleanup, you can haul the brush, get the brush to the road. But I wouldn't recommend, especially a smaller company, to go in and do humongous trees and tear up your equipment. And basically, you have to know what you're doing. You have to have more experience to do the bigger trees. Trust me. Stay away from the big trees. If you do get the jobs, bid them high and sub them out. So we can go into more in that detail later, but just off the cuff, that's what I recommend. Trust me. So if you if you can get a hold of sometimes it's cheaper to buy a bobcat, which is fine because there's a lot more of them and they're more plentiful. So a lot of times you can get a better deal on a bobcat because everybody's got them. They're just everywhere. They're more plentiful, and you can get a better deal on them. But if you can pick up a mini skid, a compact loader, it might cost the same or a little more, but you're going to be able to do more jobs with that mini skid because you're going to be able to get in the backyard, take down a fence panel, get in, and also too, you're not going to damage as much stuff because when you're in a bobcat, you can't see around you, and you got to be very careful. A lot of times, even if you're careful, you'll run over stuff, you'll hit things, you'll do a lot of physical damage. The smaller skid steers, you might have to take, like cut it in half or make maybe 2 trips instead of 1. But in the long run, you're going to be better off. Also, too, they take up less space on your trailer. So you're basically in there, and the parts a lot of times are cheaper. Like the tracks are cheaper because they're smaller. You can fit more of them. They're easy to operate, and if they do break down, it's possible to drag them or pick them up. If you have a full-size bobcat, it's kind of hard to pick them up and put them on your trailer. You might have to have basically a mechanic or someone work on them on site. And if you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, those guys have to come and fix it on site. So that's another thing to think about too. The next thing you want to do is you want to, if you're using a small compact loader, I start out with like a landscape trailer. And you want to build your landscape trailer to where you can haul debris and equipment. That's what we've been doing lately because we downsized. A lot of the jobs, you're not going to be able to include a loader truck fee, because right now it's like 350, 400 bucks. So if you're doing a job that's like $1,000 or less, that's almost 50% of basically the whole job. So basically once you divide it out and pay everybody, that's over 50% of your profit. So a lot of times what the best thing to do is on your smaller jobs, take the debris and try to put them on your trailer, even if you have to make another trip or two. And you want to try to find a spot, a transfer station, to where maybe you can basically dump off the material and load up like 2 or 3 jobs, or maybe a week's worth of jobs. And at the end of the week, call in a loader truck and get all that material at once, because then you're paying one loader truck fee instead of one every day. So instead of paying 350 or 400 a day, you pay it once a week. So I know it's harder, it takes more time, but you'll be able to save money, and you'll make more money on each job. So get a mini skid steer, get a trailer that you can put your equipment on, and you can haul debris with. And it'd be nice to have a dump trailer to do that, but when you have a dump trailer, sometimes it's harder to get the equipment on because they're a lot taller, and the gates are not permanent. So it's a lot harder to get the material, especially a mini skid, to be able to dump the material on there and basically get your equipment on there at the same time. So if you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a fabricator, the best thing to do is get a landscape trailer, but get the biggest one you can, and get one you can easily load equipment on, because what you can do is basically go up the ramps and load all your material in front and load it and pack it in. And then at the end of the job, you can leave a little bit of room to pull your skid steer or your mini skid on the back. If you have a full-size Bobcat, it takes up the whole trailer, so you're not going to have much room to haul debris. So, and if you're doing smaller jobs, a lot of times you can fit all that material on your landscape trailer. Um, a lot of times too, you want to get as many people in your phone as possible, because not every if you're working with either big companies or basically mom and pop contractors. Like I have a couple people that pick up loads for me. Sometimes they're not always available. So you want to have 2 or 3 numbers you can call, because sometimes you can't get paid until the job's done. And if you have a bigger job, you can't haul the debris yourself. You're going to have a loader truck come and get it. But that loader truck guy might be on another job. He might have his own situation going on. His truck might break down. So you want to have at least 2 or 3 people you can call, basically, to get your loads. And also too, if you have bigger companies hauling your loads, sometimes their price fluctuates. So sometimes you call them and they're like, hey, the load's 500 bucks this time instead of 300, and you bid the job for a $300 load. So you want to be able to call around and make sure that you're not going to get stuck, because if you only have one number or 2 numbers, and one of the guys, his truck breaks down, the other guys, basically the price goes up. So you're kind of stuck paying the bigger price because you don't have enough contacts. So you want to have at least 2 or 3, maybe 4, as many loader truck numbers as you can. That way you can call around and get someone that's able to pick up the load. I always try to call my guys a day or 2 early, or maybe even a week early, so I know they're going to be available to pick up that load. Another thing you want to do is you want to talk to the customer and give, basically, you want to the bigger the window the better, because sometimes if your guy is a little bit less expensive, he does a good job, but he's not always available. You can call him up and say, well, can you pick up this load? Well, I can get to it, but I can't get it till the end of the day, or I can pick it up the next morning or the next afternoon. So you want to let the customer know ahead of time to keep them happy, because a lot of times they're under the impression once you finish the job and before you get paid, that material has to be picked up. If you let them know beforehand, listen, we have another loader truck coming. We can't put all the material on the truck, but he'll be here tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. That way you can still get paid on the job. And also too, you're not going to have any phone calls, or you're not going to have anybody that's basically wondering what's going on. Like, hey, the material's still here. I don't know where your guy's at. I thought the material was going to be gone. I woke up today and the material's still here. I'm leaving work, the material's still here. I'm not happy. So make sure you make communication with the customer and give yourself a little leeway. Say, hey, it's Friday. We don't usually work over the weekend. First thing Monday morning, it's going to be picked up. If it's not picked up by noon, give me a phone call. I'll take care of it. So it gives yourself a little bit of time, and it keeps the customers happy, because if their expectations aren't met, a lot of times they'll give you a bad review or nothing good can come out of it. So you always want to let the customer know, hey, the material is going to be here for a minute. We have the loader truck is busy right now, but the first chance, which will be tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, if anything happens, and then it's another thing, the guy calls you and says, hey, something came up, I had a flat tire, or, you know, uh, tied up on a job a little bit longer. Give your customer a call. Let them know that that loader truck isn't going to be there exactly on the time you said. It might be like, hey, are you supposed to pick it up tomorrow morning? Something came up. He's going to pick it up this afternoon. So that way, that if the customer knows, he's not going to think you're trying to stick them. So if the loader truck doesn't show up and your customer sees it and he's expecting to get picked up, you're going to have a phone call, you're going to have a problem, and they're not going to refer you. So make sure you cover your tail on the loader truck. Um, Another thing is, if you don't climb yourself, and even if you do, you want to have a list of about 2 or 3 guys you can call, because even if you have a bucket truck or you have a lift, sometimes things need to be climbed and you're not going to be able to get equipment to it. So if you climb yourself, that's great, but you can throw your back out, you can get hurt, something can happen. You might have to be doing something else somewhere else. Have a list of at least 3 or 4 people you can call to climb, because it's going to be worth it. Trust me. I've had many situations where I couldn't climb, or I needed to be on the ground, or who knows what the situation was. When I first started, I didn't hardly climb at all, and that was one of the reasons I had to start climbing, because the people that I were counting on, they didn't show up, or I couldn't get a hold of them. So that's how I basically started climbing. And I climbed so much, like I went to Oklahoma for the ice storm, our climber wouldn't climb. He wouldn't, basically I couldn't get him to climb. So I ended up having to climb and having to climb more and more. I got to the point where I was climbing like 8 or 9 trees a day and getting the ice sickles out of them, cutting off the dead leads and climbing out every branch. And basically, by the time I got done with that year or 8 months, I was just as good as the climber I had. So when we got back into town, I never called him. It's like, hey, why aren't you calling me? I'm like, well, you created it. You created your own worst enemy. I can climb just as good as you, if not better, and I show up every day. So get as good as you can at climbing, but remember, every dog has his day. When you're 50 years old, you're not going to want to climb every day. Even though you can, you're going to be wanting you, hoping you had someone else to call. So get about at least 3 or 4 good climbers under your belt, and get as good as you can at climbing yourself, because one day you're going to call 4 or 5 numbers, nobody's going to show up, nobody's going to answer, and you're going to have to climb yourself. But there's going to be another day when you're hurt or you don't feel like climbing, or there's a situation where you're better off on the ground, you're going to wish you had some people to call. So that's a rule of thumb. Have at least 2 or 3 people, 4 people you can call. And usually if climbers are good, they're going to be busy. So that's just the first list of basically starting a tree service. Um, like I said, you're going to probably start part-time, because when you start a tree service, especially nowadays, there's so many people doing it. I mean, when I started, there wasn't but a handful of tree services. Now it's like there's hundreds of them right in our own area. So basically what you want to do is make sure you're licensed, get your license, and get your insurance, because that's going to put you above about 50% of these startup companies, because a lot of times they just go out and start a tree service and they don't even have license or insurance. So that's going to put you above most of them right there. Another thing is your mini skid steer. If you have a mini skid, you're going to be able to set yourself above everyone else as well, because that mini skid is going to do a lot of the work, and it's not going to tear up the lawn and landscaping like a lot of the other companies with the bigger machines and basically the skid steers, because wheeled skid steers will tear up a piece of if you don't drive it perfect, it's going to tear something up. You put somebody in there, it hasn't been in a bobcat, and you put them in a nice yard, that yard's shot. So anyway, this is the first lesson. I know it kind of went on for a little bit, but I'll have a series of more lessons and basically try to cut them a little bit shorter. I know 25 minutes is kind of long to watch, so I'm sorry about that. But this is Roger with 584 Tree, and just helping the small guys get started on their tree service, and just a few pointers to help you guys out and get you guys started. Another thing is, don't put all your money like I did back in your tree service. If you can stay small like this, and you can take some of your money and put it in the stock market, like buy Tesla stock, you can compound your money. And basically, instead of buying all this big equipment, a lot of guys go out and buy the big loader trucks. They go out and buy the best, biggest bobcats and humongous equipment, biggest stump grinders they can get. A lot of times, you're better off keeping your small equipment and subbing out the bigger stuff. Because I bought a loader truck, I have like 3 of them. And if I would have took that money and invested it instead of putting it in the put it in the market instead of buying all this equipment, because think about it, if you get a loader truck, the first one I bought was over $10,000. I got a smoking deal on that. I had to fix it up. I put another 5 or 10,000 in it. Had over 20,000 invested. Had to pay insurance every week. Had to pay a driver. And then I bought another one. They wrecked it. That was over 50,000. And the last one I bought was over almost $30,000. So all that money tied up, and you don't realize that you get a good deal on it, but you have to pay insurance every month if you're working or not. You have to pay maintenance on it. You have to pay storage on it. And then if it's a CDL, you got to pay a CDL driver to drive it every day. So basically all that money that you're pouring in, plus that, 10, 20, 30, $40,000, every day you're putting money and you're paying out money every day, insurance, maintenance, driver, all that money you're piling it in. That money could be working for you. And in the wintertime, when you're paying all those payments and you're not working, it's terrible. It's terrible. You're making payments, you're making insurance payments, you're paying people to maintain it, you're paying storage fees on it. You got 30, 40, 50, some people have 100,000 or more tied up. All that money could be in the stock market, like in Tesla stock, and it could be doubling, 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 doubling. So anyway, it's food for thought. Don't tie all your money up and take out all these loans and have all this money tied up in your tree service when you first get started. And if there's ways to compound your money rather than having it tied up, that's awesome. That's a lot better than what I did when I got started. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please crush the like button and subscribe, and I'll try to make it shorter next time. Have a great day.